If you are a hair professional and you've ever considered turning a portion of your home into a salon or a barbershop, then this episode is going to be great for you because I'm going to be talking to Gibson. He transformed a portion of his home into a barbershop. And he is going to be sharing the ups, the downs, the pros, the cons, things to consider if you're thinking about transforming a part of your home into a barbershop or a salon. Let's get started.
You're not just a hair professional, you're a CEO.
Hey guys, I'm Jen, founder of Hair CEO, a business coaching and accounting firm, helping you build a premium brand focused on profits. On this channel, I bring you videos on business and taxes tailored specifically to self-employed hair professionals and beauty business owners. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. Thanks for joining me today on Hair CEO. Before we get into your journey to opening up your home barbershop, tell us a little bit about how you got into barbering.
Easy question. When I was 16 years old, I asked my mother for clippers for my birthday. This is in the 80s. And I just saw a lot of young guys who were driving cars and making money. And, they didn't appear to be on the streets. They appeared to be, working in the shop every day. And I said, man, that's for me. So I asked my mother for clippers when I was 16. And like every barber story, I tore up a bunch of my friends for a long time. And when I was 18, I went into the military and I was stationed in Maine, which has a 3% Black population. Okay. So I figured this is as good a chance as any to practice on people. And I just got kind of good over the years,
Okay. I'm sure you didn't start out with just opening up a home barbershop. So give us a sense of where you were working before and what models were you working in for as it relates to barbershops?
Once I got out the military, I didn't go into barbering immediately. I wanted to, but I didn't have the money to go to school. So I worked in the corporate world for a little while and ultimately got downsized. And I just bought a house. I had my fourth son was on the way and I didn't know where life was taking me. It was, it kind of makes me nervous to even think about that time in my life. I didn't know what was going on. Yeah. So I actually drove past a barber school one day just on a humbug and I said I should stop in here. So I stopped in there, went to go get my hair cut and ended up talking the owner into letting me start there, So it was a two-man barber shop. I didn't. I never went to barber school to this day. I still haven't gone to barber school. I apprenticed. And in the state of Delaware, you can apprentice, but you have to do twice the time. So yeah, I went to go get my hair cut. The guy who usually cut my hair, he wasn't there. And I asked the owner, where's he at? And he said he quit. And I said, well, I'm about to go to barber school. You should hire me. And he said, can you cut? And I said, yeah. So I started like the next Monday or whatever. He signed me up with the state. I had to do 1,800 hours, I think is the rule here in Delaware. And so I worked there for 2 years. I completed my 1,800 hours. At that point, one of his clients was opening up a shop. And he asked me, did I want to work for him? And I said, yeah, but it was like a mega shop. So I went there and stayed there for 4 years. Ultimately, that guy teamed up with another barber. They opened up a mega shop and I went there with him. I stayed there for 6 years and then ultimately I left. What made me finally decide to do it on my own, I didn't like the direction the shop was going in. Like we were making a lot of money, but it was, pretty much what you expect, people shooting dice at night and, people drinking out of brown paper bags. And ultimately, I was having a problem with another barber. We were having a problem together, to the point where it was becoming very uncomfortable for everybody. You just never knew what was going to happen between me and him. And one day I came to work. One of the barbers said, hey, your boy's leaving. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, Friday's his last day. And just something struck in me like, well, Friday's his last day. Friday's my last day then, because now people can't say that he chased me out of here, so we both left on that Friday. And I went to work at home.
Problem with both of you guys left?
Yeah. Yeah. When he left, that just kind of gave me the okay, like I can leave. Nobody can ever say that he chased me out, I know it sounds crazy, and it sounds crazy for me to even say it, but that's how it happened.
Okay. I guess it was because maybe during all of the confusion and, you were like, I should just leave, but you didn't want it to look like he forced you out or made
He was the reason that I left.
Gotcha.
Right. I already had a shop in my house. I have a pretty big house and I had an office that wasn't being used. So ultimately I set up a barber shop in my office. And I would like, if I didn't feel like, if somebody called me late, I would be like, just come to my house. It was a way for me to not have to do all of my cuts in the house. So I'd already had that set up. And then when he said he was leaving, I was like, hey, I'm going home for good then, you know,
Wow. So you were already setting up things at home, but that was not to do it full time. It was just more for convenience.
for convenience. That's all.
Okay. So were you really selective over which clients you would have come to your home versus, hey, like I'll see you at the shop.
Well, I always tried to work with a certain type of clientele, even to this day. You know, you kind of select your own clientele. Every now and again, somebody slips through the cracks, and you get somebody that you is not an ideal client. You know, but yeah, when I left the shop, they just didn't get noticed that I left. You know, I just up and
Mm,
left one day. And when they would ask about me, the other barbers in the shop, they would be like, "Oh, you got his phone number? Give him a call." But I would tell them, if I left him behind, that means I don't want him. So you guys should start, taking them. So there was never a big announcement.
and you're married, correct?
I am.
Okay, so what was your wife's thoughts on having clients come into the house? Like, was that ever a conversation?
Yeah, but surprisingly, it was a conversation in the opposite direction. Like, I used to always make these threats, like, "Oh, I'm sick of it, Dare. I'm going to work from home." And every 3 or 6 months, she would say to me, "Are you still coming home? Like, what are you going to do?"
Mm,
And, I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm going to get to it, But I was so comfortable because we were making so much money in that shop. I just couldn't imagine just up and leaving. So I was kind of putting her on stall and et cetera. And then to make it even weirder is that she works from home. So,
wow.
yeah, she would be, and she's a pharmaceutical executive, so she's in meetings all day. So there would be times somebody would ring the doorbell and she'd have to get up from a meeting and, so on and so forth.
So how do you deal with that now? Because I'm sure like that's still happening, right?
No, because when the pandemic hit, the government started giving out all this money. And I found a loan. They could have even either like given you $1,000 or something like that, or you could have taken out a loan. And I chose to take out the loan. The only rule that they had is that you couldn't use the loan to switch locations. And I
Okay.
was already in the house. So I had a basement that was unfinished at the time. So I
Mhm.
got the loan, I hired a contractor and built out the basement. So now one of the things I did when I built out the basement, I had a door that goes directly into the basement. So if you didn't come to me while I was upstairs in the office, you don't even know what the upstairs of my house looks like. People just come directly to the basement.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about finances. Do you mind sharing how much the loan was for? And I'm curious as to how much it took to really build out your basement.
Okay, that loan was for $26,000.
Okay.
And I want to say I might have gotten something like $9,000 when they were giving people money for money they had missed out on, like, self-employed people. So that might have been like another $9,000. I want to say I got like $8,000 for something else. I can't quite remember what it was. And then I had my own money also.
Okay.
Ultimately, when it all shook out, when everything was said and done, it probably took me about $60,000 to build out the basement.
60,000. Okay.
Yep.
And tell us what did that 60,000 include? So I know that was an unfinished basement. So the framing, like tell me everything that was in part of that 60,000.
Okay, so the 60,000 got my basement built out, and currently what it has is a sitting area, a bar, a bathroom. Also, I put a bedroom down here for my son and the barbershop. In addition to that, I had to blow out the side of the house to put a door down here.
Mm,
Then ultimately, it wasn't the first thing I did, but later on, I had a client who slipped in the mud because I was building a deck and building my basement at the same time. So my backyard was a mess. One day it rained, and an older client slipped and fell. And yeah, that wasn't a good look. But he wasn't mad or anything. But I was like, hey, I got to get a walkway back here. So the
okay.
last thing I did was I put a walkway in the back.
Oh wow. Okay. So tell us the dimensions of the barbershop, like everything you have for the shop that you built.
The shop itself is probably, I would guesstimate, probably like 14 by 10. It only fits two chairs. And that's it. The barbershop may be 20% of the basement, maybe.
Oh
It's just
wow.
the first thing you see when you come in. Then
Okay.
the sitting area, it's really like where my family like watches TV and stuff like that. But I put people over there because I don't like people sitting in my face when I'm working. So if somebody comes in while I'm working, I'll say, have a seat over there. And the bar, I kind of decorated it with the shop logo and everything, just in
Mhm.
case I ever get audited for the money or whatever. I can say this is a part of the shop.
I love it. Did you have to get any permits, with building out your shop? Did you have to deal with any zoning issues? Tell me what that was like, the planning stages.
I had I don't want to say an architect, but I had a guy who works in the field come by and he kind of told me, this is where you need to put the door. You don't have any option. This is where the water is. You don't really have an option. So based off of those things, that kind of told me like where the shop needed to be and so on and so forth. As far as zoning and stuff like that, we'll just say I have understanding neighbors.
There you
You
go.
know, nobody,
Meet those.
nobody, yeah. I just have understanding. I tell my clients never park in front of their house. You know, always leave 2 spots open in front of my house,
Okay,
and
good.
they never park in front of a neighbor's house. When you come here, come directly inside. When you leave, get directly back in your car. You know, and I've been doing it for 5 years, and I've never had a complaint yet.
Good, good. Like you say, it helps to have understanding neighbors. So is that something that you would recommend for anyone like looking to start their own barbershop, like or salon? How important is it for you to talk to your neighbors? Because some people might think, well, I don't want my neighbors in my business. Like the less they know, the better. Or do you err on the side of caution where it's like, no, I'm gonna go ahead and let them know, and that way it's never a problem. What are your thoughts on those two options?
In my real life, I would always err on the side of caution. I would always tell people what I was doing in my real life, but in my work life, because the thing is, if they would have said no, I was going to do it anyway. I mean, so no, I didn't ask anybody. I was just very considerate of them.
Okay.
And to this point, it's worked out. Now, over time, like my neighbor on one side, she knows us pretty well. She knows I'm a barber. The neighbor on the other side, he knows I'm a barber. He's never said anything about it. So to this point, it hasn't been a problem.
Awesome. So what about the adjustments that you've had to make, if any, with being at home? You mentioned that no more than like two cars are out front. So did you have to kind of switch up how you did things as far as when your clients were able to book with you? Like did anything change in that respect?
No, when I was at the shop, I always worked on appointment. Well, I'm not going to say I never took walk-ins, but I tried not to take walk-ins. So when I brought it home, that structure was already in place. People know I don't like them sitting around for 30 minutes staring at me while I'm working. The only time I ever put rules in place was when the pandemic hit. And I would say you're not allowed to come in more than 15 minutes early. You're not allowed to be here when somebody else is here. Sit in your car until you see their car leave. But that was only during the pandemic. I had a bunch of rules during the pandemic, but during my regular work life, people just kind of know how I operate, and they just kind of abide by it.
So let's talk about security for a minute. So you mentioned how there is a separate entrance. What about cameras? What are some things that you've kind of put in place for added security?
I do have cameras in my house. Up until now, I don't advertise that.
Sorry.
I've always been a lover of. I have a bull mastiff. A couple of other things.
Oh,
Security hasn't
yeah, we
necessarily
can
been my
we can leave it
you
at
know,
that.
we'll leave it at that. Yeah, and I'm the first person you see when you walk in. So right away, if I don't recognize you, we'll talk about it.
Okay. Now, do you think with the budget that you had, because I think all in, so what we were at like 60,000, right?
About 60,000. Yeah.
If you could do it all over again, right? Because for a lot of people, hindsight is always 2020. Was the 60,000 enough? Did you need more?
No, the 60,000 was probably about 15,000 too much. I'd had a contractor in my house previous to that doing some other work, some very simple work. And I had a relationship with him. So I gave him the job to do my basement. And he was probably in over his head. And as a result, I had to hire other contractors to come behind him. And, maybe something like the path, if I thought of it sooner, I could have included that along with with the work. I had somebody different do the door as opposed to the basement. Maybe I could have hired the same contractor to do both things and got a better price on it. So I would say definitely I could have done it for $50,000, but I would guesstimate maybe $45,000. And I would say I probably went overboard with it because of bad decisions that I made.
So you say you never worked off of the walk-ins. How do you
Get
manage
the word out.
new clients, like people who see you online or referrals? Like, do you tell people like, don't refer me? Like, what about these new clients? How do you vet them?
Well, I don't advertise at all. My business card doesn't even have my address on it. So there's that. I've been very blessed in that my reputation speaks for itself. Even people who don't come to me, they know that there's a guy here in town who cuts out of his house. And I'm that guy. As far as when people text me, because that happens a lot, people will call me or text me and they may say something like, my friend Jen, she referred me to you. And I'll generally do something like, hey, I'm in the middle of cutting somebody's hair. Let me call you back in a minute. And then I'll call Jen and I'll say, hey, Jen, this guy, Joe, just called me. He said he's a friend of yours. And then, you say, oh, yeah, that's my brother-in-law or whatever. And I'm like, okay, can I bring him in my house? And they say, yeah. And I say, okay. And then I call Joe back and I'm like, okay, what do you need? So I vet people that way.
Okay, that's interesting. Are you not on social media?
Well, I do have a social media account. I have Facebook, but Facebook is for my real life. Uh,
Okay.
I have an Instagram account. I have a LinkedIn account. I've never used it though. I wouldn't even know how to find it again if I needed to. But just the type of person I am. Like I'm just not a look at me type of person.
Mhm.
So my Instagram account has like 600 followers, and these are because the way that I figure, and you can correct me on this, the way that I figure, I live in a town of 21,000 people.
Okay.
Nobody's going to drive here to get their hair cut by some miscellaneous guy. I may have gotten, over the course of my life, I may have gotten 5 or 6 clients from Instagram. Otherwise, everything works for me as far as word of mouth. So I just never put that much time into Instagram. In addition to that, like I said, I'm just not a look at me type of person. Like I kind of am comfortable in the shadows. That's my comfort zone.
Okay. I don't think it's anything wrong with that whatsoever. I mean, it's the business model that you've chosen for yourself, right? So, because you are vetting, it's a little bit more involved. Would you say that your prices are more expensive or comparable to if they were to go to a barbershop?
My prices are on the low end of comparable. Uh, and people beat me up about it all the time. They think I should charge more because you get the experience with me. You're here by yourself. It's your time. And people say that for that, I should be charging more. My feeling was I don't pay chair rent. I got to pay the mortgage on the house anyway. I got to pay the loan back anyway. Like, why should I charge you because, of the decisions that I made? But every 2 years, I raise my prices. I try to stay on the low end of comparable. If everybody's charging 50, then I charge 40. If people start charging 200, then I'll charge 175. That's kind of been my business model.
Okay. Nothing wrong with you saying, okay, I'm always going to be on the lower end of market. That could be a strategy, that could be where your brand is heading, but just because you're working from home doesn't mean that you can't pay a rent. You could, and I'm not trying to get into like giving you advice, like this is about you, but of course you could set it up where you're paying rent to yourself. So a portion of your expenses could be, okay, the barbershop is going to pay, X amount of dollars each month for renting this space in the basement. So then it goes into your expenses because you're still using the space in your home, utilities. So you don't want to just say, oh, well, if I didn't have the barbershop, I would still need to pay these expenses anyway. Not necessarily, because if you didn't have the barbershop, you wouldn't have as high of a utility. So there are definitely things that you can write off as expenses when it comes to, pricing your services. So that's a little
Well,
to me.
well, no, actually, I'm listening now. I'll be 100% transparent with you. I kind of backed myself into a corner because when the pandemic hit, barbers went from like $25 to 50, and that didn't fit with who I wanted to be. I just didn't want to be that guy. So At that
Mm.
point, I came in a little bit lower than everybody else, and I said I would raise my prices every 2 years. So do I think I deserve more? I do, but I just don't know how to make that big jump like that in one fell swoop. And I kind of backed myself into a
Mm.
corner.
That's fair. I mean, that's the first step, right? Realizing, like, hey, I may have put myself in a corner here. I'm thinking about your business model, what you told me about your business so far. One of the things automatically that I thought about was you're in the perfect position to offer subscription services because you
Explain.
only subscription services is something where you could have, and again, this is off the cuff, right? Like I'd have to think it through, but subscription services in a sense that you could offer your clients some amount of haircuts for the month, along with some additional things like it comes with a drink, it comes with, refreshments, and you get X amount of visits per month, but it's on a prepayment of the subscription. And this is another way for you to also increase your prices without it being so much of a shell shock, because you're actually changing the way you're doing things. And so it's perfect for someone like yourself because you're not worried about walk-ins. You really have like a consistent flow of returning clients. And so
Right.
this would be an easier sell where, we would have to spend some time together and say, get into the minds of your clients, because you do have a specific type of client. And so we would need to
Absolutely.
get in, okay, what is it that drives these clients? What is it that they would really benefit from? Or what is it that they're looking for? Are they looking for early morning services? Like maybe in your subscription, you have a VIP where those people can book appointments before 9 a.m. Like
Okay.
maybe the early birds are not available unless they're on a subscription, or, like
Mm,
that's something that executives, because you say executives, right? Like a lot of
right.
executives
Absolutely.
get in and out early, right? And so
Right.
that's something that you could offer. Again, I would have to really get into your clients and asking you more questions, but these are just some of the things that I think of that would put more cash flow in your bank. And then people are just making appointments. They've already prepaid you. And so now you have like that influx of cash coming in every month. So that's something that we can talk about off this call, just maybe having like a consultation, because I do believe that there is one thing about being on the lower end, but we just want to make sure that you're still profitable. You might be not necessarily just having lower end prices, but you might actually be operating at a loss. And that's one thing I want people who are listening to this interview to understand, is that just because you are operating a barbershop or a hair salon from your home doesn't mean that you don't count a portion of your home expenses as business expenses. Like we want to calculate that and have a percentage that's based on business expenses so that you're able to make sure that you're still profitable. So I'm really glad that you said that. And like you say, being transparent, right? Because it's something that you didn't do in the beginning, but you'll want to make sure you do it moving forward. And with a strategy, right? Not like tomorrow, haircuts are $60.
Right.
What would you tell the person who wants to start a home barbershop and wants to do a build out? What advice would you give them?
The first piece of advice that I would give to a barber who wanted to do it is, you have to be very popular at your current location. This isn't a place where, you can jump right out of barber school and start working from your house. It doesn't work like that. You have got to be the man. And that's not to suggest that I was the man, but I was definitely one of the men. And at the time when I left, I think I was paying $215 in chair rent per week. And the way that I used to decide whether I was ready to come home, I would say to myself, how much of this money belongs to the barbershop? Meaning, how much money did I make on walk-ins? And invariably, I would always come under $215. It would be like $100 on walk-ins, $80 on walk-ins. And I would be like, man, I'm just giving the barbershop free money. They're living off of me. I'm not living off of them. And that was
Mm.
ultimately the decision that made me say it's the right move for me. So for any other barber, particularly young barbers who want to get right to the money, as they all seem to want to, like you got to be the man where you're at. And you have to be, one thing that I learned is that I'm a very detail oriented person anyway. That's just who I am. Like, you can't bring people to your house and you're sitting your clippers on an ironing board and you're cutting them in an office chair, and you're playing videos on a TV. Like, you have really got to offer them something. There has to be a reason why they want to come to your house.
Love that you quantified it and you said for you it was okay, I'm paying $215 a week in for this chair. And essentially you're asking yourself, okay, what is the barbershop bringing in for me as far as walk-ins and
If
tracking
I
that,
lose every
right?
one of those walk-ins, yeah.
Exactly. So you tally up all of those walk-ins, and when you routinely saw that it was less than $215 for that week, then you were like, okay, it's not benefiting me to have the walk-ins.
Right,
So that's
right,
one way of quantifying it. And I love that you said that because anyone can implement that same kind of, math and say, okay, that's a really good way of thinking about it. And it's just one thing because of course you have to want to be, home. You have to want to not be in that atmosphere with other barbers. Do you
right.
miss do you miss that? I mean, of course it comes with some drama being in a shop with tons of guys, but I'm sure there's a lot of fun with being a lot around different barbers. So, what about that? Do you miss it?
I don't miss it. I will say though that those guys are my friends. Like, they're really my friends. That's who I hang out with in my time off and things like that. So when I left there, it was like leaving friends behind. And but there's only so many times you can talk about this Kendrick and Drake beef. There's only so many times you can there's only so many times you can talk about the fight on Saturday night. And I was just getting older. I hate to hang it all on age, but that's how I felt. I was just getting older, and the barber shop is a young man's game. Barbering is a game for everybody, but the barber shop is a young man's game. And
Mm.
I was starting to become like the Cedric the Entertainer. I was the old guy in a young shop, and I was like, I got to get out of here. Excuse my language. I'm sorry.
So, okay, so you don't miss that part of the barber shop. But what
Not at all.
about I've heard so many barbers say that being around other barbers in the barbershop, it strengthens you. Do you feel like your skills have deteriorated any, or just not being up with the trends and kind of what's going on and what people are doing? Do you feel like you lose some of that being at home?
I feel like you could lose some of that. And that was one of my biggest concerns when I left, is that I wouldn't be able to see what, the kids are doing, what other barbers are doing, because I implemented a lot of their strategies into my haircuts. We learned from each other. And that was definitely one of the things that I was concerned about. However, in this world that we live in right now, you can watch Instagram and, YouTube, and, you can kind of see what's going on. And that's what I do. Like, I watch Instagram the way that people watch TV. Like, I really try to learn. And
Okay.
because of that, I'm able to, kind of stay up on trends and stuff like that. Plus, I get my hair cut every week. I kind of watch what, my barber is doing and stuff like that. He was a guy who used to work with me, as a matter of fact. And then once I opened up from home, he did the same thing.
Did you ever consider going from the booth rent to salon suite, and what made you kind of skip that option?
You're right. They were around. They weren't necessarily as popular as they are now. I
Okay.
just didn't want to pay anyone else any rent. I had a big house. I don't know. It was just always my idea to have a shop in my house. Like, I thought no one's house was more beautiful than mine. I thought nobody did better business than me. I thought the look of my house was exactly the image that I was trying to portray. Jen, I'll be honest, I never thought about it. It never entered my mind to go into a suite, not even
Okay.
once.
Wow. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, sweets can be expensive and it's an
Yeah.
expense, right? So, and I'm all about lowering expenses whenever possible. So, yeah, I love that answer. It could just be I just didn't want to pay anybody rent. Now, for you actually had your home before you got into barbering full time. Is that correct?
I had a home. This is my third home that I've owned. When I got into barbering full time, I was in my second home,
Okay.
and then I bought this one later. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the purchasing of this home that you're in now where that has the barbershop. It sounds like you kind of always had this idea that you would have a home barbershop. So when you were looking at the home that you're in now, were you thinking about, okay, would this be conducive to a barbershop down the line? Like, was that ever a thought in your mind when you were looking at homes?
It wasn't, the woman is the one who looks at the homes. I just kind of, nodded my head. But to answer your question, no, I never really even considered it. Even still, when I came home, like I said, I went into the office first. I never thought I should build out the basement. I just thought I got this office sitting here with nobody in it. I should use this.
So what about so the person who is searching for a home right now, let's say they are a barber or braider, hairstylist, someone who does hair, and they're looking at purchasing a home, but they want to make sure that where they end up can house a shop of their own.
Right.
What are some things that you would tell them to look out for as far as when they're shopping for homes, what to take into consideration?
Separate entrance is the most important thing. Have a separate entrance. And then I would say probably the next thing is make sure you're in a magnificent neighborhood. Like I got very lucky in that, we're in a premier neighborhood. And so when I tell people that I'm in, my neighborhood, when I mention the name of it, like that immediately raises eyebrows. Number one, because how are you a barber living in that neighborhood? And number two, like, oh, I love the houses over there. Like, I'm gonna come get my haircut just to take a look. So you definitely don't want to be in the hood unless you service hood clientele. If your clientele is hood clientele, then you want to be right in the middle of the hood. In my case, I wanted to service executives and, things like that.
You mentioned that people will say like, "Oh, you're a barber and you can afford this. Like you live in that neighborhood." I don't know why people think hair professionals don't make good money. Like that is
Uh,
beyond me. It,
I know.
it baffles me. There is so much money in this industry, and especially for those that manage their money properly.
I have a good friend of mine who's a barber, and he and we would always have this saying, like the corporate people, they think, oh, poor Gray, he's just a barber. And the hood people, they're like, man, Gray's making a killing over there. There seems to be like no in between. They think that you're just, some poor guy who's squeezing out $2 an hour, or they think that, you're like making all this money. Nobody thinks that there's just an average living barber.
Yeah, that's so true. Now, do let me know if this is too personal, but when you were purchasing your home, I know that you are married. So, of course, it's a two income household. So, was it difficult with you being self employed getting approved for a home loan?
I guess both. Like, as you definitely got to show more information. I kind of wish I had met you before I started buying houses because you could have, set me up a little bit differently. You know, I got very lucky in that, my wife is very successful. What I'm saying? She's very good at what she does. And, she makes a lot of money. What I'm saying? So the thing was, though, is that I was the veteran. So we used, all the benefits that come along with being a veteran. So I have to be on all the home loans because I'm the veteran. So, but she's just, she reminds me of you in the sense that, like once she knows that there is a way, then she's going to find it. Like she's not just going to be like, oh, this doesn't work, let's not do it. Like once somebody tells her, oh no, there's a way to do that, like she's going to find it. So
Makes
I
sense.
just tell her like this is what I want to do, and she does it. Every good thing that has ever happened to me in terms of barbering, in terms of finance and things like that, somebody gave me a rumor, and then I told her, hey, there's a rumor that such and such, and she's like, okay, I'll find it, and she does, and so.
Wives are the best. I mean, I'm biased, but wives are awesome. Let me tell you the funniest thing. One of my clients, before he was a client, he called and had a clarity call with me. And I said, "Oh, how did you find me?" And he was like, "Oh, my wife found you on YouTube and was like, you need to work with her." And I was like, "What?"
Yeah,
I mean, and that's happened like 3 or 4 times. So your wife
yeah.
is a very smart woman.
And
um,
then to backtrack as far as like the industry as a whole, when you were asking me when somebody wants to come home, what should they do? Like I would say for any young barber, like what works for me and all the barbers who I know that are successful, they all have corporate wives. because you don't want to be two people who have to go through all of this stuff to get a home loan, and you don't want to be two people who have to go through all of this to get a car loan. You want there to be some kind of normalcy, so
Okay.
my opinion is barbers should marry corporate women. They shouldn't marry stylists. My opinion, stylists should marry corporate men and not barbers.
You might be
Did I just
ruffling
hurt
a lot of
myself with that?
feathers right now.
I'm sure I am, but that's my opinion. I think that's what you should do. If you're a barber, you should marry a corporate woman.
I mean, I'm not gonna knock you though, because I will tell you this. Being an entrepreneur, I'm not married. So being an entrepreneur, I'm just like, I'm not marrying another entrepreneur. Like I need because this is
Look,
not
I
even
understand that completely, though. Like that makes 100% sense to me. Like, what if both of you don't know when the next check is coming in, and like,
see, for me, it's not even about the next check. It really
right,
is about this entrepreneur life is stressful. Like this entrepreneur life is a lot of hard work. And people have the wrong idea of entrepreneurship a lot of times. This, like this stuff is hard work. Like, and you're
yeah,
constantly on. It's always something you can be doing, right?
right, right,
And so
absolutely,
I don't want to be married to someone who's always on, like I'm always on. Like I
right,
need somebody to be
yeah,
like, babe, like you need to turn this computer off. Not, yeah, let's open up my computer too. Like, no, one of us
right,
has to be able to like unplug, right?
right. Like, no, my wife is very familiar and comfortable with me answering texts at midnight. Like, I assume the average wife is like, well, who's that? What do they want? But
Right.
when I get a text at midnight, she's like, what, somebody wants a cut for tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah. Or like if she's talking to me and I just start looking at my phone and she's like, what are you talking to, a client? Like she just knows how the business goes. Like so much so when somebody else says something that's not right, if somebody says something like this is what entrepreneurs do or this is what barbers do, she's like, no, Gray doesn't do that. I can't agree with you. Like she knows the game.
But I mean,
So
but here's the other thing. That's a good marriage too, because we cannot minimize the trust that comes along with that. I'm sure that's been years of trust as well, not just her being understanding. That's got to come from you doing the right thing as a husband. You know what I mean?
me, I always do the right thing. So, but no, it's I would say to young barbers, if you can, and everybody else, please don't shoot me for this. If you're a barber, you should marry a corporate woman. It makes life a lot easier, man.
If you're already
Yeah.
with them, it's okay. Your heart is
Stick with
already
them.
taken
Yeah.
aside, but stick with them. We're not promoting divorce, and we're not
Right.
we're not promoting
Right.
to get rid of your person. But if you're single and
Yeah. Yeah. We,
and
we
so
we both can't be working till 9 o'clock at night. You know what I'm saying? So, you need some sort of normalcy here.
yes, absolutely. I'm 100% on board with you on that one. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
it's sound advice. So if they're gonna come after you, they're gonna come after me too.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate that.
I got your back.
Thank
And I
you.
just want to shout you out because I'm wearing your shirt.
Thank you. So am
Yes.
I, actually.
Oh, nice. So just to let viewers know that because they may care, maybe not. But Gray actually came down and saw me as I was presenting at a hair expo in Baltimore. So from Delaware, and bought me this shirt, and I was really appreciative because I'm not about the Fendis and the Gucci's and Louis. That's just it's never been my style. So I will rock this, and I will proudly stand next to anybody wearing any Italian brands. I will show up with this shirt on proudly. Okay.
Thank you. Even
Absolutely.
though when I saw you in Baltimore, you said something to the effect that we shouldn't get involved in too many things, and I immediately thought of my shirt when you said that. Is that
No,
accurate? You said something to that effect?
I did say something
Okay,
to
I'm
that,
listening.
but
Okay,
this is different. Like for me, this is branding.
I
This
think so.
this for me is branding. And if you are wearing this shirt, right, and you're cutting hair, this is now a uniform. This is now
Okay,
tax deductible. And if you're already wearing it and you make it available to your clients, then great. maybe they're purchasing it, but what I would say is limit your expenses, right? So I wouldn't want you creating this shirt and then ordering 50 of them to just sit in your home. I don't want you holding a lot of inventory. I think a lot of
Okay.
times people are over optimistic on what people want to wear. Most people aren't going to want to wear your brand around. I mean,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like this, I love rocking your brand because of what I do. Like I have
Right.
an accounting firm that only works with hair professionals. Like
Right.
this, if anyone comes up to me and is like, "Oh, are you a barber?" No, but I can spark a conversation. But your
Right. That's
clients,
true.
think about it. Do your clients really want to walk around with this shirt on? Probably not,
Now,
right?
see, I'll tell anybody else who's listening, like, you're right. I overestimated, how it will work. And it was funny because I immediately sold out when I ordered them the first time. The
Okay.
second time, it might have taken a little bit longer to sell out. And now I have inventory in my house. And I generally, like, if a client is moving to another city, or if a kid is going to college, or if a kid is joining the military, their last haircut, I might give it to them or something like that. Now it's become branding in that respect. Like, hey, don't forget, I was your guy when you were 17 or whatever. But no, I only have, 100 some clients. Everybody can't get a shirt, and everybody doesn't want a shirt. You know what I'm saying? And then I think I kind of fooled myself when I sold out immediately. But no, there comes a point where people no longer want to wear it. You know.
Yeah, I mean, you just again, you have to get into the minds of your clients. You really, really do. I mean, if I'm buying a shirt from, let's say, where my hairstylist, again, I'm different because this is, this is my industry.
A conversation starter for you.
Yeah, but like, so for example, let's say if I'm trying to think of another service provider, so if a plumber is selling his shirts, I'm probably not going to buy a shirt with my plumber's, business.
Logo on it,
For
yeah.
what? Like maybe I'll go to sleep in it. And I
Right.
might buy it from him because he's standing right there and I feel bad for the guy or something. But like we
Right.
really have to get into the minds of our clients. And us, a lot of times you're thinking like yourself, like you're the one who put all this time in this logo. Like you're the one who's like, yeah, that looks good. Like this is your brand. So it does something
Right.
for you. But this is probably not doing much for your clients. So they're not as excited
Sure.
about your branding as you are. So I'm not knocking it, but what I'm saying is get into the minds of your clients and let's be realistic about it. And if you do want to produce merch with your business on it, make sure it benefits them. So let's say if it's a wave cap, I don't know, is it going to be functional for them? Are you giving them a haircut and then you're telling them, hey, okay, when you go home, I want you to put this do rag over your head for at least 4 hours today because it's going to lock in your
Okay.
waves. And then you sell
Okay.
them something with your barber's name, like with your name on it. Now that's something they can
Right.
purchase because it's
Yeah.
functional for them. But a t-shirt, not so much. You see what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
Is that making sense? And the same thing goes for hair products, right? Like everybody wants hair products. And it always baffles me. And I'm sorry because we're going way off topic here. But
That's okay.
it baffles me sometimes because I see so many hairstylists will offer shampoo, right? And it's like, well, wait a minute. Do you want your clients to come back to you, or do you want them to do their hair on their own in their house?
On their own.
Because you see what I'm saying? Because so many hairstylists that I work with, their shampoos don't move, and I'm like, it makes sense that they don't move because they're coming to you to get their hair washed. So why
Right.
don't you again get into the minds of your clients? What are you telling them? Okay, after their hair is done, what is going to help them maintain their hair, their hairstyle, their haircut? That's the stuff you want to sell, as merch or as products. Like it
Okay.
has to be functional for your client. And so you just want to always be thinking of your client. I mean, I'm never going to wash my own hair. It's just not happening. Like I'm just at a point in my life where I'm just not personally washing my hair. So you can't sell me shampoo. Like it's just not
Okay.
happening. Maybe I'll do some leave-in conditioner, but I go to the hair salon like every week. So I just, are you going to sell me something that's going to maintain what I got going
Until I
on?
get here next
Like,
time. Right.
that's it. And I think that's what we have to think. Like, get into the minds of your client. Hopefully, you got some wheels turning. You know.
Well, I try to keep everything as simple as I can. So what I hear you saying is, I'm not selling anything. First of all, I'm just not the type of guy to sell. I hate when I go somewhere and somebody tries to sell me something. So as a result, I tend not to sell.
Well, here's the thing.
But
It's different. Don't look at it as selling. I think most people get uncomfortable because it's the asking for money that becomes uncomfortable. But what you have to change your mindset of is I'm giving them something that they want. They're coming to you because they have a problem that they need solved. And so
okay.
if you look at it like selling, then yeah, no one wants to be sold to. But what if you look
Right.
at it as I am helping you solve a problem? It's just it costs to solve it.
Right. Right.
And if you look
I
at it
got
that
it.
way, you'll never sell again in a day in your life because you're helping your clients. Like who doesn't want to help their clients?
Right. Right.
So
Okay.
think of it that way. Think of it through that lens, and then that'll also help you stop selling stuff that people don't want, right? Like your clients probably don't want this t-shirt. I want the t-shirt.
Right.
Who you're selling it to becomes different, right? So it's like,
Right.
okay, who would want this type of t-shirt, you know? And then you may not think to yourself, okay, this is something I'm going to be selling my clients. Maybe this is something that you sell somewhere else.
Right. Got you.
And so now
Yeah.
you have to think to yourself, what problems do my clients have? What can I sell them that would help them with what they have going on?